Mike Tyson, at his peak, was unkillable. The fastest hands in heavyweight history, the most ferocious puncher the sport had ever seen. Trainers, managers, fighters, everyone who came near him said the same thing. This man is not beatable. And then he became untouchable in a different way. He stopped listening to his trainer. He fired the people who challenged him. He surrounded himself with people who told him only what he wanted to hear. He began to believe that the rules that applied to other fighters did not apply to him. He lost to Buster Douglas, a 42-1 underdog, a man that nobody, including Douglas himself, seriously believed could win. Tyson did not lose because Douglas was better. He lost because ego had already beaten him before the first bell rang. This is what ego does. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive one day and say, "I am here to destroy everything you have built." It arrives as confidence, as self-belief, as the feeling that you have earned the right to stop doing the things that got you here. And by the time you realize what it has already taken everything. Most people misunderstand what ego is. They think ego means arrogance, overconfidence, believing you are better than everyone else. And yes, that is one face of ego, but it is the obvious face, the one that is easy to spot in other people and easy to dismiss as their problem. The real definition of ego is this. Ego is an unhealthy belief in your own importance that disconnects you from reality. It is the gap between who you are and who you think you are, and that gap can run in both directions. Ego is not just thinking you are better than you are. It is also the man who thinks he is worthless and uses that belief to avoid doing anything difficult. Ego is any fixed story you tell yourself about yourself that stops you from seeing clearly. The philosopher and author Ryan Holiday wrote that ego is the enemy, that it is the enemy at the beginning of your journey, when it makes you think you know more than you do. It is the enemy during success, when it makes you believe your success is purely your own doing and that it will continue regardless of what you do. And it is the enemy in failure, when it refuses to let you accept what went wrong and learn from it. Ego is present at every stage of a man's life, and at every stage it is working against him. History is a graveyard of great men killed by their own ego, and studying these men is not about feeling superior to them. It is about recognizing the patterns before they appear in your own life. Alexander the Great, by any military measure, the greatest conqueror in history, undefeated in battle. He took the small kingdom of Macedonia and in 13 years built an empire stretching from Greece to India. Extraordinary discipline, extraordinary strategic genius. And then the victories began to change him. He started demanding to be worshipped as a god, something that horrified his Macedonian generals, who considered it deeply alien to their culture. He executed Clytus, one of his oldest friends and the man who had saved his life in battle, in a drunken rage when Clytus dared to criticize him. He began making decisions based on his self-image as an invincible divine conqueror, rather than on military reality. His campaigns became increasingly irrational. His relationship with reality became increasingly fragile. He died at 32, possibly poisoned, possibly from disease worsened by excessive drinking. His empire immediately fragmented because he had been so consumed by his own greatness that he had never prepared for the possibility that he might die. Kanye West, whatever you think of his politics or his personal life, in the 2000s he was genuinely one of the most creative forces in music. The college dropout, late registration, graduation, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, albums that changed what hip-hop could be. And then the ego that had always been present, that had always been part of his public persona, began to consume the work itself. The music became less important than the performance of genius. The relationships that challenged him fell away. The people who told him hard truths were replaced by people who reflected his self-image back at him, and the creative force that had made him extraordinary became harder and harder to find underneath the noise of his own ego. These are not cautionary tales about talent. Both of these men had real ability, real achievement. The ego did not destroy invented success. It destroyed genuine success. That is the most important thing to understand. Ego does not only threaten mediocre men, it threatens great men most of all, because great men have the most to lose, and because success is the environment where ego grows fastest. Here is the uncomfortable part. Because it is easy to look at Mike Tyson or Alexander the Great and see the ego clearly. It is much harder to look at yourself. Ego does not feel like ego from the inside. From the inside, it feels like confidence. It feels like self-respect. It feels like knowing your own worth. The very nature of ego is that it disguises itself as virtue. So how do you recognize it? There are signs, and they appear in ordinary daily life long before they appear in catastrophic failure. The first sign is that you stop being able to hear criticism. Not that you accept every criticism blindly. Some criticism is wrong. Some is motivated by jealousy or malice. But when you find yourself unable to seriously consider any criticism, when every challenge to your view feels like a personal attack, when you find yourself dismissing feedback from people who have demonstrated they know what they are talking about, that is ego at work. The ego cannot tolerate the possibility that it might be wrong, because being wrong means the story it tells about itself needs to change. The second sign is that you start attributing your success entirely to yourself. Every good thing that happened was because of your intelligence, your work, your decisions. Every bad thing that happened was someone else's fault, bad luck, circumstances beyond your control. The Stoics called this the asymmetry of attribution, and it is one of the most reliable early warning signs that ego is beginning to distort your perception of reality. The third sign is that you begin to confuse your identity with your achievements. That winning becomes not just something you do, but something you are. That losing, even small, temporary, reversible losing, feels like an existential threat. Because if your identity is built on being successful, then failure does not just mean you failed at something, it means you are nothing. And a man whose identity depends on never failing will eventually stop doing anything that risks failure, which means he will stop growing entirely. The Stoics understood ego better than almost any school of philosophy in history, not because they were moralists who disapproved of pride, but because they were practical. They understood that ego is a liability, that it distorts your perception of reality, and that a man whose perception of reality is distorted makes bad decisions, and bad decisions cost you everything you have built. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, wrote in his private journal that you should receive without pride and abandon without struggle. He meant that the good things in your life, the success, the reputation, the achievements, should be received as gifts, not as proof of your inherent superiority. And when they are taken away, as everything eventually is, they should be abandoned without the kind of desperate clinging that the ego demands. Epictetus, who was born a slave and spent years in chains before becoming one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, said that we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. The ego's judgment is always the same. Everything that happens to me is a reflection of what I deserve. Success means I am great. Failure means I am being treated unjustly. That judgment, that constant interpretation of life through the lens of what the ego believes it deserves, is what makes failure catastrophic instead of instructive. The Stoic answer to ego is not humility in the passive sense. It is not making yourself small. It is clear seeing yourself as you actually are, with your real strengths and your real weaknesses, rather than through the distorting lens of either grandiosity or self-pity. A man who sees himself clearly knows what he can do and what he cannot. He knows where his knowledge ends and someone else's begins. He knows when to act and when to listen. That clarity is not weakness. It is the foundation of every good decision he will ever make. Killing your ego does not mean destroying your ambition. It does not mean accepting mediocrity. It does not mean agreeing with everyone or abandoning your standards. It means something much more precise and much more difficult. It means making the gap between who you are and who you think you are as small as possible. The first practice is staying a student, not performing humility, actually remaining genuinely curious about what you do not know. The moment you believe you have learned enough in any area of your life is the moment ego begins to calcify your thinking. The greatest practitioners in any field, the best fighters, the best investors, the best leaders, share one quality. They have maintained genuine curiosity about their craft, long after they had any objective need to keep learning. That curiosity is not modesty. It is the recognition that reality is always more complex than any model of it, including yours. The second practice is doing the work without needing the credit. This is harder than it sounds. Ego is addicted to recognition. It needs people to know what you have done. It needs the acknowledgement. And when the acknowledgement does not come or goes to someone else, else. The ego reacts with resentment, with anger, with the conviction that you have been treated unjustly. Practice doing things that nobody will ever know you did. Practice contributing to outcomes where the credit goes elsewhere. The discipline of working without needing to be seen for it starves the ego of what it feeds on. The third practice is the hardest. Seek out people who will tell you the truth, not people who challenge you randomly out of negativity or jealousy, but people whose judgment you respect and who have demonstrated they will tell you what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear. Protect those relationships. They are more valuable than any amount of praise, because praise feeds the ego, truth feeds growth, and only one of those things actually helps you. The ego will never fully disappear. That is not the goal. The goal is awareness, the ability to notice when the voice in your head is telling you the story of your own greatness, and to ask whether that story is serving you or protecting you from something you need to see. The greatest men in history, the ones who built things that lasted, the ones who left something behind that mattered, were not men without ego. They were men who learned to use it rather than be used by it, who channeled the drive for significance into work rather than performance, who understood the difference between confidence, which is based on evidence, and ego, which is based on the story you need to believe about yourself. Ryan Holiday ended his book with a simple observation. Ego is the enemy of what you want and of what you have, of learning, of building, of keeping what you have earned. Most successful people are one ego trip away from losing everything. Most unsuccessful people are one moment of honest self-assessment away from turning everything around. The variable in both cases is the same: how clearly you are willing to see yourself. Iron hustle, no excuses.